and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a weekly book club podcast where we talk about some Dungeons and Dragons and discuss how we might include them in our role-playing campaigns. With me back again for another look into the future, but also into the past, it's our wonderful co-host Hamilton. Hello, Hamilton.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thanks. I am tired, but it's okay. We meant to do this, so I put myself in this position.
It's your own fault. I have no sympathy.
Yeah, no, I stayed up way too late last night, and then I was like, oh, I've got recording first thing in the morning. Oh, well. All good, though. All good. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm okay. There's always like a million things to do.
Yeah, classic, isn't it? You look at your to-do list and you're like, well, I've done a couple of things. And you go, but it's not got smaller. No. I don't understand why.
And you have no time for yourself. So I look a mess, I feel. Like I haven't done my hair's like a mess. I've just been like, it's that kind of feeling. It's just like, I've taken the tree down today.
Hey, that's a big deal, right?
Cut the tree in half so it will fit when the people collect it. which also means like hoovering because it just gets needles
everywhere. Yeah. See, I think it's a job in itself. So I think you deserve a little treat. Maybe you can go to Warhammer World at some point,
yeah, there you go. That's good. I like that. Thank you.
I can't tell you how much I go onto Instagram and it's like, usually it's a lot of like Warhammer blokes and their wives going like, do you need another bit of plastic? And they're like, yes. And we're driving 2 hours to the nearest shop.
There was a great one, this Australian couple, and she's like, have you seen that one? He's what do you want for Christmas? The Warhammers? But don't you have all the Warhammers? No. Can't I get you like a tie? No. What do you want? Everything.
It's quite sweet that, because obviously she's like, how can you not have a theory that you don't understand? But it's like, it's not like punching down or anything like that. She's just like, doesn't understand why it's
the concept of it. It's not like, exactly. She's happy to buy it, but she's kind of like, but I'm sure you've got them, right? You've got all the Pokemons kind of thing.
I think it also works because they're both Australian as well. So just the accents are like, you just don't understand. Then just go towards the Warhammer world.
The happiness in his face when he sees the Warhammer, I was like, I know that feeling. I had some good news though. I contacted Kickstarter and they have agreed that I'm allowed to start a new Kickstarter. So
well
there
done.
we go.
That one person
holdout is just going to have to accept that they haven't got their books. But so because Canada is now open for business for postal deliveries, so that was it. That was the last holdout. So
excellent. So you start working on the next thing. So and get that page up. I know you're excited to do that. So nice work.
That's it. That's my biggest news since we spoke to each other 2 days ago.
Yeah. Well, Hamilton, what are we talking about today? What is our topic of choice?
Our topic of choice is probably one that you'll see all around the world of podcasts, which is a review of 2024 and a look forward to 2025 in the world of Dungeons and the Dragons. And it's been an interesting year. I feel like it's been actually a slightly, like it was built as the 50th anniversary of D&D. Wait for everything to be super cool. And
it's interesting because again, lots of people will have done their years in reviews and stuff like that, and we've obviously the way we record, we don't ascribe to time, but we just this will come out beginning of February, I don't know. but I think it's good to look back and see what's happened, because a lot of stuff did come out last year, and with the 50th year, obviously there's a little bit more focus on them. Obviously there's a lot of more publicity about it, and lots of putting forward, say, like the VTT. Obviously, they had a whole thing at Gen Con with the player's handbook, the new player's handbook and stuff. And it's actually to think about, like, okay, now we're in the next year. What have they got planned? And we know a little bit about it because they've done a presentation about it, but it's good to just, how do we feel about it? I mean, are we excited for it? As two people who like D&D, have played it, but also like a lot of other RPGs, and some of us design other RPGs as well. It's like, what is there to look forward to? And is it something that we would actually go, we changed something about it,
I'm more excited about this year than I was about last year, apart from, I think when 2024 was coming on, I think like the biggest thing feels like they had to get through, and they still have to get through the update. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which is one of those things where it's a bit like when corporate comes down and tries to tell you how exciting is their rebranding, and you sit there going, and they're going to do about 50 presentations on it, and they're going to draw this out, like how they've rebranded and how it's like a whole thing. And actually what it really is someone's changed the font and the color scheme, and that's about it. Do you know what I mean?
And on top of that, there's also a conscious shuffling of departments that they're just putting at the end, and you're like, "Hey, hang on."
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah, and then we're just going to fire everyone. Yeah. So we're rebranding and reevaluating our position, which means downsizing. So that's kind of the thing that I felt for this year, and I think the only other thing that come to mind though is the relationship to the history of D&D has been sometimes positive in some ways, and like, you know, talking about like all the wealth of stuff they've got from the past. So you know, we did Questioning for Staircase recently, and we did the Barrier Peaks and those sort of stories that they'd done in the past, which were really cool. And you're like, where's all that gone from D&D? You know, where's all those like weird old sort of grimy fantasy sort of disappeared to, in a sort of like, you know, and not in a sort of like, oh, trad way. I just mean in
like,
a sort of
nostalgic. Like, it's like, oh, well, yeah, this was a cool thing. Why do we not have necessarily those elements now?
Yeah, why do we not have this more surrealism, I guess, is kind of what I'm thinking of. You know, that had in like there's a person building a dungeon called the Tomb of Annihilation. Like, why? You know, where's that? It feels like that's kind of disappeared a bit. Yeah. And then you had Vecna, which was like really cool in places, but really overall we had issues with and stuff like that.
Yeah, the big adventure of 2024 was the Eve of Ruin, which we went through, and I think that came out in May of 2024, and it's interesting because like I personally have only seen like a handful of people doing like one shots or series of it, and I wonder, is that one of those things where I call it suffers from the Russell T Davies problem of like, we're going big, it's a reality bomb, you know, and it's like all realities at the same time. In this Marvel movieverse, sort of like everything coming together, which I guess makes sense for the 50th, but also like, I don't know, I'm just like, right, well, we've done the big thing. Well, what now? How are we going to top it later? Exactly. And it was fine. Like, again, I have no problem, but again, it's that sort of idea of like, so yeah, it was like what levels 10 to 20, so the first high level fifth edition one that we'd seen for a long time, and then you journey through the multiverse, and then you face down the Archlich Vecna itself. And one of the big criticisms that quite a lot of people have, including ourselves, is that Vecna didn't really turn up in it that much till the end. So it was like, oh, okay, I guess. Like, it was like I think you called it the greatest hits of D&D. Yeah. I always feel like whenever you put out the greatest hits, you're like, I don't know if they're that great. It's just like, oh, we need to make some money quickly, and we'll just put out all our favorite songs, just put them onto one album, you know.
Yeah, it was a bit like all the filler, no killer, until like, you know, a bit in some ways. Well, I guess like, yeah, I think the individual adventures were really cool, and I think it's like it felt a bit more like a compilation pieces, which seems to be what they're doing a lot of, like Questing for Staircase, Yawning Portal, I know it was years ago, but Radiant Citadel, Candlekeep Mysteries,
I was going to say Time Heist, no, Keys and Golden Vault.
Lock and Key, that's what. Keys and Golden Vault. You know, it's just like lots of little mini adventures, and I think the only really big campaign we had was Dragonlance I could think of recently. There wasn't a new like adventure that was just like here it is on all its completion. Yeah, it was just Vecna for the 50th. So it's just a bit of a shame, really.
In terms of like new stuff, we don't have it for 2024, and new stuff for the 2025 we do have. But one thing I do want to say before like anything else, the one big highlight I had from 2024, which I think was surprising to both of us, mostly because it was supposed to be in 2023, was the Book of Many Things that came out on the 5th of January, and we read it through, and we said at the time, is it something that you should have as a GM? No, not really. But everything in it, every page, every word, banger. It worked so well. It had so much. It's like, okay, you've got these cards, but you've got now loads of cards, so you can make your own decks of many things. Oh, but you can also tell people's futures. Oh, but you can also inspire characters. Here's free dungeons. Here's free locations. Here's free cults or free different sort of organizations based on them. And you're just like, wow, they've had a proper meeting about it, and they've gone through it, and it just felt so loved, so put together. And that came off the back of like lots of layoffs as well, just before Christmas. I think that was that time. There's also been more layoffs since then, and it's just like that for me, I was like, there's so much value in that thing. And obviously it was a very expensive piece of work, and it got set back due to production values and stuff like that. But honestly, when I read it through and I finally got it, I was like, this was a lot of hard work that got into it. And I think if this wasn't in 2024, I had actually written 2024 off as I was all right year because, like I said, it's the update year. But Book of Many Things was just absolutely my highlight, and that's at the beginning of January.
And it was beautifully put together. All the art in that was absolutely top class as well.
Just everything about it had been thought through thoroughly for something that you don't need. Which, of course, and a lot of people were like, well, why would I need it? Because everyone, myself included, everyone's like, oh yeah, the deck of any things, we could put that into anything. And you're like, yeah you could, but why would you need it? And then this kind of gave an example of every instance that you would use it. And so I just found that interesting as a supplement. That was my big highlight of the year. But that said, I have enjoyed when we've gone through the Infinite Staircase properly in detail. Like, obviously, I know you've read into it a little bit more than I did. But then when we see this year looked at like barrier peaks, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I hadn't considered it. And it feels like they're focusing on the little things to like just get stuff out there rather than taking the time to go over longer, more in-depth things, and even have like parts 1 and part 2, like Waterdeep, Dragon Heist, and then Dungeon Mad Maze, because they are technically connected, even though they're both very separate and both very detailed. And I just kind of miss having less releases but more detailed, more work put into it. And I don't know if it's this culture in games just now that we must put out, because what if we're forgotten about? And I'm like, you're not going to be forgotten about. Like, you're D&D, people are always going to use you because you're just in the zeitgeist because of all these things. And it's all little things, like little bits to tide us over till the next big thing.
So it's just it feels like we've got to get through this filler bit of fixing putting out the new editions, which they're interesting in their own way, but I think a lot of it is it's 5.5. If best, it's 5.25 even, really, because it's kind of just like, let's collate all the other stuff we've done over the period, put it together, and then make some little additional tweaks as well.
And that's not to say a bad thing. Like, I know we've not really covered the Player's Handbook or the GM's Guide right now, but from the brief bit of me looking at it, I would say like it feels so much more accessible. There's a lot more into it. And so if you were starting literally this year with RPGs and stuff, I think it's a really good starting point, like a good jumping off point.
Oh, 100%. It is a much better document. And I think it was worthwhile. I don't think it was not completely unnecessary.
But was it a 50th anniversary worthwhile? I think that's the key thing, right? Yeah. I think that comes from a big marketing thing going like, hey, what if we do it like this? And you're like, just do it anytime. And then do a really cool adventure. Do a really cool setting for the 50th rather than like, let's revise everything. Because there's always going to be people who don't want to change, as we know. So,
and even in that, it's just like, even the fact that it's such a minor change and it's not going to affect everything. It's kind of like a lot of people will. They're a lot of money, all 3 books. And if you've already got all 3 books, of the old edition, you're just going to stick with that and be like, I'd rather spend my money on something new that I'm going to get a lot more out of, rather than a prettier, better laid out, more accessible version of what I've already got. But I've had it for 10 years and I know it now, and I probably could get away without having to pick it up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there'll be some teething problems, as I'm sure people have had, like trying to remember that, I don't know, exhaustion has completely changed now. It's like minus numbers, whatever. But as long as you're willing to take the time to do that and not be like, and try the new system. I think that's the thing. I feel like they've put this out and because they don't like referring it to as 5.5 or anything like that. They don't want this version to be seen as less. But I think like, as long as people are willing to try it and change and get to grips with it, then that's the thing. And I think that's a conscious cultural thing. But I know if anything, it's that sort of us versus them. Oh, the players will never understand. And I'm like, I will. I'm always happy to, you know me, I read different systems all the time. And I'm not going to be like, well, this is rubbish. Like, I'll homebrew it if it's rubbish. I'm like, all right, I'll change this to this. And I'm not going to be cross. Like, I lament how Great Weapon Master has changed and I'll be sad about it. But at the same time, fine, I'll deal with that. And it's we can homebrew it, so it's the old version. And I think we just need to remember that, yes, the official rules are like, oh, they're like this, and you must stick to them. And you're like, no, you could just change it for your table. That's the big thing, is that these are just guidelines more than rules.
I think the thing I'm really looking forward to more than any actually is the Monster Manual.
Yeah.
Because it's the one where they've changed the most of the full the stat block is a completely different thing now. We've seen some of those in some of the new information they brought out, but I really like, and they've updated stuff on D&D Beyond already for some of them, and I think it's a really good way of doing things. And I think that's my biggest you've made combat, which for me is the thing that's already so bloated in D&D, which and at the end of the day, D&D is a combat simulator more than anything. Like that's what 95% of its rules are about, or 90, a good proportion of their 80%, let's say, of the rules are around combat. The way you build your character is all about, it's a lot about combat skills that you're gaining, and the abilities you gain are a lot of the times to do with that. And so, having a monster stat block that's much more efficient and easier to read and streamlines everything and tells you what you can and can't do and applies all that infinite knowledge. That's what I'm more excited about. Yeah. So that's kind of what's coming this year.
From the brief bit, I looked at some of the new information, like you said, because there's lots of now videos about the new Monster Manual that's going to come out. February 18th is the proposed date. So they're going to have over 500 individual monsters now. But they've not only have they made like changes, like you said, to the stat box, but they've done it like maybe you don't want to always do the most deadliest attack for whatever reason, and giving that option to players. And that's always, I find that really interesting because, there's stuff like the monsters know what they're doing blog and all that sort of thing, going like, okay, you've looked at the stat block. How do you interpret to be like, what is the most effective way to be attacking your players? I like that as a thing because, I'm not strategically minded at all. So I'm just there going like, I don't want to keep using this really horrible thing. It's like they're clearly trying to do something and they've just failed a roll or anything like that. So I quite like that sort of thinking about like, how could we use the stat block and interpret it differently? But also got new artwork. There's new lore, which I'm really excited to see, like lots of different lore about the different monsters. And there's this idea of introducing monster families and like sort of like showing the different kinds of them. And I'm like, oh, that will be fun. And just like taking the time to think about it rather than like, oh, here's just something I'm just going to throw up on the thing. And like showing each individual monster doing something cool so that the GM could be like, oh, I want to do an encounter with them, rather than like, a Sphinx will do. Yeah, I'll just put a Sphinx in, and I'll put some Dryads in, and and rather than just like randomly assign. I mean, that's absolutely fine as well. But I'm like, you should be excited to play like what's on your battlefield. What Pokemon are you putting out? And I choose you, Gyrosphinx.
And that is the way actually that sort of more Games Workshop works in a way, a little bit, which is what we were talking about a bit off. Was it on podcast? I forget when we talked about that, but and that sort of idea of like, here's the new shiny Pokemon, and we're going to keep up that, doing. And it's been 10 years. It's sort of okay, isn't it? Really, I think it's fine. And also saying to someone, like, if you're someone's new and you're like, oh, I want to do this, well, you need to get Xanathar's guide out, which is like 95% of it you don't need, but 5% of it is really important, or Tasha's Golden Everything, where you're like, so this changes loads of things. You need that book to understand this bit.
But then looking ahead to what is coming out in 2025. So from the slate that I have here, we have this Dragon anthology. So another anthology coming out in the summer of 2025. Hey, it's dragons, your favorite. What are you talking about?
Yeah, we had like Fizzband 2 years ago. Like, it feels, I don't know.
It says this collection of 10 short adventures will be the first book to use the new rules. As the name suggests, each adventure will be focused on around one particular dragon, and it will be suitable for a range of character tier levels and can be played together or run as an individual one-shot. So again, very much like Keys to the Golden Vault kind of thing. So I assume that there'll be a faction of some sort that you're a part of, and they'll send you out to deal with the dragons. Maybe like harmoniously, maybe you're going to be fighting them, who knows. I'm guessing it's a mixture of both like chromatic and metallic dragons together. It's gem dragons, because obviously there's a lot of each one. So I don't know if it's like one for each lineage, or you know what I mean. So I'll be interested to see what they've come up with.
I'm trying to do the math. I guess you could do 5 chromatic, 5 metallic, couldn't you? Yeah, right.
I assume that, again, I can't think off the top of my head. I assume that's everyone is accounted for apart from gem dragons. So
blue, white, black,
all of Tiamat's got 5 heads, right? And then
5 heads. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm also there going what metallic dragons do we have? Gold, silver.
I know the chromatic ones. So you got blue, white, black, green, red.
Yeah.
That's it. So then you have like gold, copper, bronze. Silver, platinum.
I always get copper and bronze mixed up all the time, and I know this. I know they're different.
Copper's green, bronze is brown. That's how. In reality,
that's wild. I'm like, copper's copper.
Copper's green, then it goes blue and verdigris. Bronze goes sort of darker brown as it ages. Yeah, that's it.
See, there you go. There's the dragon knowledge coming out. Where were you?
That's just my metal. That's my metallurgy knowledge.
Oh, right, not your dragonergy.
I don't know which one. I don't know. I assume copper is green, but I don't know which one. Bronze must be. Gold is red, the equivalent of red.
Yeah.
Bronze must be the equivalent of black, maybe.
Yeah,
and then,
I think one of them's acid and the other's poison.
yeah, so copper must be poison then.
I think so.
And then
again, but it's also poison and acid is also very similar to me. I know they're not the same, but I'm just saying it's like it's a green liquid that you're like, oh, don't touch, you know.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm off topic. But,
one hurts your outsides, one hurts your insides. I mean, the acid hurts your insides as well, but you know what I mean.
One doubly hurts you both sides.
Yeah, exactly.
Then there's the new D&D starter set that's coming out in the fall of 2025. But they've already had like a new starter set recently. There's like the Dragon no, not Ice Peak. It's Dragon Isle.
Dragon Isle, yeah. And then this one's Keep on the Borderlands from 1979. But it's like reworking. So they are doing their dig into the old books.
I just wish there was like, let's do something new. Let's just try it. But I know it's easy to be like, let's just repackage something. But I'm just there going like, because we've already had this with the DM's guy talking about Greyhawk. They're like, here's the base template for this, and I'm just there going like, why don't we just come up with a new starter adventure rather than keep looking back? And I'm just there going like, what's new? I need something new. And even like the last two books on the slate. The Forgotten Realms player guide and campaign guide, which are both late 2025. I'm just going like, that's not necessarily new. That's just more stuff of the same. I'm just there like, where's the new stuff? That's all that's been announced currently. So that again, the newest thing in this seems to be that Dragon Anthology. I don't know, like the Forgotten Realms player guide. Don't get me wrong. I'm excited to see this because it talks about like noteworthy factions like the Harpers and Taran, Red Wizards. It also goes through like the campaign guide. It talks about Baldur's Gate, the Dale Lands, Moonshine Isles, Icewind Dale. So I'm like, you know what? I'm looking forward to that because I would find that interesting. We do need a better version than the Sword Coast Adventurers Guide. Let's face it, because I still think that's the worst book. But
it's not really going far out of it. Like Baldur's Gate is Sword Coast.
Yeah.
Moonshine Isles is in the Sword Coast, pretty much. Icewind Dale was already done in Rime of the Frostmason.
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate was already done in Descent of the Avernus. And then really the only ones you're getting new are Calamshan and the Dale Lands. I don't know where the Dale Lands are. I think that's pretty similar location. I was trying. I think
they'll all be like at that top in that big map essentially. I think.
Oh, it's down by Cormor, which is like the classic sort of fantasy land, if you know what I mean. Mainly there was a lot about it in 4th edition, but then Calamshan's you come to in book 7 of Drizzt. He goes to Calamshan in there. And that's I think we saw part of it in that Baldur's Gate Gazetteer. No, the other one.
Oh.
They had the 5 cities. Minx and Boo's Journal of Villainy.
Yes.
There was a part of Calamshan in that.
Oh, okay. It says here, like, this new sourcebook goes beyond a familiar and oft explored Sword Coast to focus on 5 key settings in Faerun. So they've picked these 5 to look at. Yeah. This book will include adventure hooks, new monsters, and new magic items. So I'm like, okay, yeah, great, but I'm just there going like, I want just like, let's just go bold, new adventure, maybe even just a new place. I'd love to, just why don't we just go on the sea for a little bit? I know we've already had like Saltmarsh, but like. Cult was interesting. Like I'm just thinking, like, where could we go with this new stuff and just be like a big, like, we're not going to look at the past too much anymore. It just feels like we're constantly looking at the past and like easing people in because, like, again, I feel like D&D thinks their biggest audience is veteran players rather than new players, and yet with the new updates to the books, it's clearly aimed at a new audience. So I don't know. It's feeding on. It's having on that nostalgia, and I don't know. I'm in two boats about it because I know I'll enjoy it. This is the thing. I know I'll enjoy it. It just feels like we could have more, and I'm not excited. Like Book of Many Things, I was so excited for, and then when it got pushed, I was like, I'm still going to wait for it. So I don't know.
The other thing I was looking back at is like, what did you used to get, and is this different? Are we getting into this? Is this just the new era, or is this something you used to get in like the early days? And I think like it feels like in the past you used to get so many more books. So like for example, if we go back 30 years to 1995, right? So that's when you got so when you got like 94, 95, you got second edition, right? So you got the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Player's Handbook in April 95. You also got, and I'm going to do this a bit weird because it's kind of, I'm finding like different things that you get. Also, Complete Barbarian's Handbook in January 95, Complete Ninja's Handbook in 1995. You've got also Player's Option Combat and Tactics, Player's Option Skills and Power, Player's Option Spells and Magic. You've then get, additionally, Planescape Monstrous Compendium, the whole Planescape book set, annual volume 2. There's just at the beginning of 96, you get the Ravenloft Monstrous Compendium. I've also got a Dungeon Master's Option high level campaigns book and a new starter set. That's all in just 1995. And that's 30 years ago. And it just feels like you did get, and they're all like 128 pages. We're looking at here. A couple of the monstrous ones are like 64, 100, a couple of 192s as well. So they're not tiny books. The handbook, Player's Handbook Revised, was 320 pages.
Oh,
so like loads of like, and that's not including any adventures. That's just core rules, character options, monsters and NPCs and stuff like that.
So clearly there's I'd assume big teams working on this full time, that sort of thing, rather than presumably now, again, this is me not knowing anything about it, but just thinking about the layoffs and stuff, a much smaller team working on it and taking their time on it, but it's definitely less pages and stuff. And again, there's layout and all that sort of thing, but I feel like you're not going to entice people in with rules and nostalgia. I think you want to have like something different about it, and whether that's stuff like, and maybe like I'm looking over at my stuff now. Maybe they're like, well, Wild Beyond the Witchlight didn't work. That idea of like that feels like the most like brand new one, and that was like Feywild stuff. But also they were advertising it as one of the, you don't have to do any combat, and I'm like, I guess that's interesting, but also I don't know if that's a positive or negative thing. It's just something they could find out. I don't know. They're just trying to find ways to like advertise it.
Well, we had Strixhaven after that, didn't we, as well? That was after.
But Strixhaven is part of the Magic universe. Yeah. That's the thing. There's, which I've no problem with, because I like the idea, and of course Wizard Schools always does well, no matter what we try and do about it. Wizard Schools people love.
The thing that I enjoy getting is adventures. Like at the end of the day, that's what is the really interesting part of it, and that's where you find so much more of these, interesting new things that they take on. Like, for example, Strixhaven reminded me of that little scorecard they had. And when we looked, and the other one I'm thinking of is like the factions they built out in Dragon Heist and in Dragonlance. I thought, as much as there were problems with it, there was some really fun like ways of the way that you interacted on like a geopolitical scale in a different way, which was quite new. And I think it's just fun to have more of that, because I think that inspires people and pushes the game forward more than actually a lot of the anthologies, because the anthologies are so small that they just become little stories which are fun and
great,
and great. But I don't think I'm just trying to think if there's anything that I can think of, any of them that's brought something out of it that I'm like, oh my gosh, that's changing my whole way I play the game.
Where's the next Strahd? Where's the next like thinking? Of I think that's the thing, is that we, you said, I love the anthologies. I think like Radiant Citadel, I really liked, the Keys to the Golden Vault, because they had each individual adventure was cool, but then they were like, what's the overarching thing? Oh, you're working for a faction or this. There wasn't certainly for Keys to the Golden Vault, there wasn't anything that would. Why would I keep playing this back? You're just doing heist after heist, unless your team was like, we want to do heist. It wasn't like a reveal at the end. But like looking through since Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which I think was original, and these things are a little bit different. I'm just going to go through them. We then had Critical Role, Call of the Neverdeep, which was fine, and we haven't really talked about third party stuff. We can go on to that in a second. Then we had Journey Through the Radiant Citadel, which I really enjoyed myself. Then Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, which that's technically the starter set. And then we have Lights of Xerxes, which is part of the Spelljammer, which we thought was all right. It wasn't like the best thing in the world. Then Dragonlance came out. Then a re-release of Tyranny of Dragons, so their first two books put together.
Yes.
Keys to the Golden Vault. Then Phandelver and Below, so the reimagining of the original starter set, which I think what it did good was like it that first part reinvented the starter set to be like, here's it more smoothly, and then it was like, and then we're going to tack on the second half of it, and you're like, I guess, all right. And then we had Turn of Fortune's Wheel from the Playscape, which, again, I think we enjoyed. But then when we had Vecna Eve of Ruin, it was kind of the same thing of like, we're just visiting these places. We're just plane hopping us. It felt like it'd been done before because of Turn of Fortune. Turn of Fortune's Wheel. So, and then recently, Quest from the Infinite Staircase. So I'm just there going like, it feels a lot of nostalgia or a lot of like little bitty things.
Bits,
And I think, I mean, again, we could be being unfair because obviously neither of us have written for D&D. We don't do these things. And it's so easy for us to say, like, we need new stuff. But so while we're on the Witch, that came out September 2021. And so we've had 4 years and we've had, a decent number of stuff. I think they could halve the number of adventures that they put out, like, and work on new stuff to be like one a year, as well as an anthology, because that's a separate thing. But then it's more expanded, and maybe it's a two-parter. Because we talked before about like adventures, like when we read them, like, what if this had like was the beginning of like part 1, and then we have a part 2 and part 3, like different levels and stuff, just to make it more interesting.
No, I totally agree. And and they also like deal in different things, like having you said, like talking about teams, like the anthologies. What would we, I think, was really great about Radiant Citadel and Candlekeep Mysteries is that they went outside of their immediate like company and just chose people that, out in the wild who are making games to come in and write for official content. And I think do that. That's not really going to get in the way of your team. You can focus your core team on, and having an adventure, a module team and a source team, like they you'd assume they would do, but I don't know if they are. Then, as you said, having an anthology every year, great. Having a really big, because it's like a season of TV. It's like having a whole year without having, like this year, we're going to have a whole year without a new big adventure module. And I think that's weird.
It feels very Doctor Who. It's like we take 2 years to watch 8 episodes. You're like, as long as the episodes are good, I will wait. So yeah.
Well, that's true. But if they're not, then it's a real shame. And you feel like, it's like, if it's a bad season of Stranger Things, well, I've waited so long for this.
Especially if they're 2.5 hours, like movie length ones, and it's like part 1. Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, I loved it, but I'm just like, I cannot watch this all in one sitting. I've got to go to work.
Exactly. This is not even commutable.
But one thing you pointed out to me, which of course we should acknowledge as well, is that there's a lot more third-party content on D&D Beyond. D&D Beyond has obviously expanded quite significantly, and obviously they've got this work into with this new VTT that's coming out, which I know people are like mixed views about. I think it looks very good. I don't know if I'd use it myself, but again, you know what? I'm happy for people to, if it's available to people for free to test out for a game or something like that and see if you use it, that's great. But we had a lot more third-party content, including very recently the Lord of the Rings from Free League, the 5th edition stuff being put on the platform. And it's very interesting, I think, because that's the first time. Obviously, there are other ones like MCDM,
Dungeons of Drakkenheim,
Grim Hollow, Tome of Beasts, which are all D&D, like they've all been inspired by D&D. But then having Lord of the Rings, I think, was interesting because that was originally a different system, and then Free League have always done this where they'll do their own systems, but then they'll also do 5th editions as well because they want to appeal to the mass market. And then now this version of Lord of the Rings 2nd edition is now on D&D Beyond, which is good because both you and I read the original system, the One Ring 2nd edition. Because I'll make that distinction because it's not clear. The One Ring 2E uses Free League's system or updated system, and then Lord of the Rings role playing is the 5th edition version of that. It just uses the D20 system.
It's really good, and I think I've looked through a couple of them, and I think the quality level varies slightly. I think some, and also I've got to be honest, like I think, and people might get really angry at me with this, but I feel like the MCDM content is like really big books about one very small thing.
Oh, yes.
If you're buying them, they are very pricey. They're like 40 quid. And it's like you get one thing 1,000 times. And I think personally, I would much prefer if they didn't, instead of taking the theme of monsters, the theme of evil, the theme of dungeons, I would rather they took the theme of grim darkness, the theme of high fantasy, and then took a few bits from all of those, because actually I think they do feel a little bit much, those books, having looked through a couple of them.
It's ones that aren't necessarily for us, you and me per se, but yeah, you're right, there's an audience out there. One thing I do miss, and I know people will lament this from the D&D Beyond stuff, is that you don't have that a la carte menu, sort of like you can't just buy individual, like if you were getting a warlock, you couldn't just get one packed anymore. You know, like you're like, oh, but I only need these bits and pieces. And so that's the thing. And again, that would be really difficult to do with third-party content. It's like, what if you only need like the Illrigger, for example, they've got up on here. It's Illrigger revised, but like if that's part of a bigger book, you might be like, oh, well, I only want to pay for that. I only want to pay for this character class, all these spells and stuff like that. So yeah, I agree. It's that sort of. I don't think you could do that with third-party, because obviously you want to buy the full book. But yeah, it's each their own, and like the grittiness of it. But it's interesting that they're now opening their doors to a lot more, bigger publishing companies or third-party companies. And so we talked about this before, about whether or not it may become a new drive-through RPG, which I have feelings about, because there's that talk about copyright and all that sort of thing. So I don't know is the answer how I feel about that. I like it because I go, oh, what has been chosen, what has been put into the hole, and I can look at it and go, oh, that's probably not for me, but you know what, somebody out there. So it must be what is it that's caught Wizard's eye to be like, oh yeah, we want this on our platform. Are people using it a lot more? I don't know.
Yeah, it feels like they're trying to, Ghostfire Gaming's really big. They're really big in Australia company. I think they're Australian, Ghostfire Gaming. And then MCDM is obviously like a massive, a lot of people from Wizards work there. Like James Intricasso, for example, is over at MCDM. And then the other ones, looking at them now, you've also Humblewood, and the other one is, I'm trying to find, the Drakenheim, which is Dungeons and Do's or something like that.
Not sure. Yeah,
I don't know. So sorry.
I'm not for us.
Yeah, no, exactly. It seems like it's like trying to be like an elite version of DM's Guild, isn't it? It's sort of like, these are the ones that are that we want to put our name to.
It'd be interesting to see if there's any more partner content, because what I found is that before, when we had, I'm looking here at the top, we've got Dungeons and Dragons and Rick and Morty, and then the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, and then obviously the Call of the Neverdeep, and then Tal'Dorei Reborn, and then there's been a few announcements saying like, oh yeah, like Grim Hollows is on it now, but it's not as big, like I can go, oh shit, Lord of the Rings has been announced. There's no like video to accompany it or anything like that. So I think again, it's that sort of thing, like we need more stuff. Let's put all the shiny things quickly and then just put it out, because then we've not put anything out for like 2 months. They won't know it.
It's underrepresented a little bit in a way. They did a lot about Lord of the Rings, but that's because it's a big name. They probably could have done more about it, but they've done what they've done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I will be interested to see who they get on for this year's slate, because presumably they will still expand, but it'll all be high fantasy stuff. Like, I'm not thinking like Free Leagues, any of like the sci-fi, like Alien, because obviously they've got their second edition coming out, but like Tales from the Loop or anything like that. It has to be 5e equivalent to get into the platform. So
exactly,
yeah. Is there anything that you hope for 2025? Like again, we've seen the ones that have been announced, and we're not necessarily enthused. We know, again, it's that sort of grumble. We'll still enjoy it, grumble. But is there anything that you hope for 2025 that will come out?
Can I make a cheeky suggestion?
Yeah.
D&D dies.
End of the podcast.
No, I'm joking. I think. No, there's nothing I'm looking forward to. It's like, I'm looking at it and I'm just going like, I really wanted a Faerun campaign setting. I just don't think this one's actually going to be what I want. No. I don't think focusing on 5 areas is going to be enough. I'd rather have a wider ranging thing, a bit like the Tal'Dorei Reborn one, or the Adventurer's Guide to Wildemount, which actually looks at so many different places, but did it so concisely but perfectly, gave you information about so many different areas to go to, that I was like, this is invaluable. It doesn't feel like that's what it's going to be, which is a shame. And I feel like it's 10 years too late, or at least, I think it should have been at the beginning of 5th edition. Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, I just think wasn't enough either, or whatever. That's my only personal opinion on that. And then, a dragon anthology, I'm just not that, as much as I like dragons, I'm sure there'll be some really cool adventures in there. And it's going to be, and I think that's probably the thing I'm holding out hope for. It's not what I'm looking for from D&D.
Yeah, I feel like my predictions, and that's not necessarily stuff I'm looking forward to. I think like we've got loads of actual plays that use the Baldur's Gate cast in, and I'm just there going like I've enjoyed watching them. I think they're fun, and I've always enjoyed watching like Acquisitions Incorporated and stuff like that. But I've got to the point now where I'm like, I'm not excited. It's because they've gone, oh well, Baldur's Gate is quite big, let's use the cast for it, and the cast seemed willing to do that sort of stuff. I don't know, I would like to see a new like wizard fronted actual play, which is like I don't know, it's tricky because obviously you need to have celebrities. That's the only way you can bloody watch it. But I just I don't know, I feel like that's died a little bit because of the marketing, been died down a little bit, or they have to focus more on certain things. But I'd be interested to have a good series of like a live events, and it does something different. Like I remember, again, it's not necessarily Wizard specific, but again, Acquisitions Incorporated, when Fortnite was huge, there was like somebody did like at a live event a Fortnite kind of adventure, but they couldn't show the map because of copyright, so they had to work around it, and they were just doing like it just felt very of the zeitgeist. It felt very interesting, so that's why I'm just there. Like I want to see actual players do something like, oh, that feels very modern to now. Yeah, it dates it a little bit, but so I think that I want to see some new twists on the actual players they put out, which aren't just like, it's the Baldur's Gate cast, or it's because of this person. Like, I know. Yeah, I just hope that whatever happens is that, people are, maybe this is a lofty get out one, but like, I know people aren't very happy with D&D, and I know we talk about D&D and we don't like it either, but we play it and all that sort of thing, or we read it. But I hope that this year more and more people look into other stuff. So they see the Lord of the Rings stuff, or they see the Illrigger or the Flea Mortals, and they go, oh, wonder what else is out there. And that's, I predict that a new RPG will come to the forefront. Maybe it will be Daggerheart for Critical Role, because they're just wrapping up season 3 just now, and season 4 will probably use Daggerheart. Is it the best system? It will do for them. It's a different, it's not necessarily for me. I think it's interesting, but I don't know if it's as easy to understand from a performance point of view. But then Candle Obscura, maybe that's been developed for streaming. So I think there'll be more. You're right. I think there'll be more RPGs that maybe are at the forefront, maybe because of the celebrity angle as well. But like that get shown, Yes. So I think that's a good prediction.
I think that's a very fair prediction.
I hope so.
The way it seems to be going outside of the bigger people seems to be that as well. Like the amount of podcasts out there that are not focusing on D&D is much greater than it used to be.
They're doing different things. It's you come for the people, or you come for the storyline, and it's maybe not about the system anymore. And maybe it was never about the system, but I don't know. It's very easy for me to say that, I think, because obviously I don't make these things. I assume them, and then I have my own opinion about it. But I would hope that a RPG comes out, and I think it will be Daggerheart, but it's whether or not.
Really, that's interesting.
I think Critical Role, they put a bit of stuff into it, and I think with the new launch of season 4, I think going to be in the next couple of months, they're going to go over to Daggerheart, so they don't have that D&D connection anymore, and hopefully it's that cult of personality that the Critical Role fans go, oh yeah, Daggerheart, and they'll go for that. But we'll find out. I don't know. But those are my big predictions. It's like maybe more actual plays that maybe do different things, or I hope they do different things that aren't just like celebrities but they're playing D&D, because like I don't care what celebrities play D&D for. So there you go. Those are my early morning views.
I like that. I like those. I think they're good. I think they're really good. Yeah, I kind of agree with most of. I think that's, well, I didn't know about Daggerheart, but I think you're right. It feels like the shift is coming, and I think if they're not going to bring anything out that's as good as Strahd again, they're not going to capture people. That's it.
At some point, I will inflict Daggerheart on you. I will say it is a 300-page rulebook. I know. Look at your eyes, like. Ugh. But I think it does stuff interesting. But it's interesting how it handles combos.
Is it fantasy?
It is fantasy. But the important thing is that no one is a human by default. You'll have different things. You have like turtles. You have I was going to say, no, not porcelain. I don't know. You have lots of different creatures, giants, all that sort of thing. So you have, it's all non-humans. So they're trying to really embrace that, which I think is great. But it does it interestingly. And I'd say the reason I think that's going to be a bigger thing is because like it had like first of all, it released all its like playtest stuff for free for people to look at and test out. But then they partnered with Demiplay in that BTT, so you could make characters instantly and try it out.
I have to check it out.
Whereas when we think about the Unearthed Arcana, every time they released Unearthed Arcana, there was no way to make it on D&D Beyond.
No.
And I think that's the key thing.
They used to have that as an option, and then when they got rid of that option, it was a big deal, I think.
And like this thing, I know how much work that would cost to make the Unearthed Arcana, especially if you're not going to change it.
There's a button. You can can I make it and press the Unearthed Arcana yes button, and then they should have just. I don't think it's that big a deal.
I think it's one of those things where I think there's a lot of work if they're doing it last minute and all these deadlines stuff. But that's the thing. I can't play. I have to play this pen and paper. I can't just take that barrier out for online play. Anyway, let's end this episode. So thank you so much, Hamilton, for chatting to me about our predictions for 2025 and our grumpiness about 2024 and 2025. Where can we find you? What you up to on the internet?
Not a lot at the moment. As I said, I'm getting ready for this Kickstarter, so that's in February. So I'm just going to be busy for the next month on that. But you can find me everywhere at Fueled Chaos or Fueled_Chaos on Instagram. And that's it, really. That's it. If you find me there, you'll hear what I'm doing. But enough about what I'm up to, but where are you, Fiona?
We'll do the short version today. Well, what am I? I'm Fiona, but where am I? I'm so glad you asked.
I did a really long one last time, didn't I? So I thought I'd go for a short one.
I love it. I'm like always on my feet, like, what are you going to say? What are you going to say? Where is What Am I Rolling, which is a twice monthly tabletop RPG one-shot podcast, which does lots of different actual plays and interviews with game designers. We'll have a couple of live streams happening just about now. They've not been confirmed, so I don't know if they are happening, so I'm just going to be mysterious about it. And you could go check out some interviews with some game designers. But one thing I'd love you to go do, because I'm a big fan of it, and that's what my highlight of 2024 is, go check out Solemn Veil. It was released over Christmas and people really, really enjoyed it. It is a folklore horror about a reunion of people going back to Solemn Veil, their little village, and the Veil does not wish them to leave, and all tensions bubble to the surface. It's one of my favourite things I've done, and it was... Again, I said it to somebody else recently, but it was one of the favourite things I did at the beginning and the end of the year. And it's very hard to be the same thing. So please go check it out. It's not for everyone. Your mileage may vary in terms of that, but go check that out. And come check us out on Discord and all the places for DM's books as well. So
come say hello.
Come say hello.
And tell us what you're interested in.
Tell us what you think 2025 holds for the Wizards. And maybe you're a bit more positive than us going, probably not much.
Not a lot, really. Maybe a slow decline into oblivion. But
Hey, we'll find out if this episode goes out after January 20th, huh? So we'll... all right, with all that out of the way, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you
on the flip side.
Bye.